Hi, everyone. We'll just get started. We'll get started in just a moment. We're just letting everyone into the room. Hi, we'll get started in just a moment. We're just letting everyone into the room. Gonna give this just another minute as we let everyone into the room. For those of you who just joined us, if you want to use the chat, tell us where you're coming in from. I'm in Alexandria, Virginia. And let's see how we're doing. All right, I am going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to the forum webinar, which is called Building Connections to the Traditional Trades Through Training. My name is Priya Chaya. I am the Associate Director of Content here at the National Trust. And today we're going to explore some key strategies for engaging the next generation in the preservation trades while talking through some of the challenges, opportunities, and possibilities for the future. This webinar is part of a collection of content recognizing 10 years of HOPE, which stands for Hands-On Preservation Experience, CREW, which is focused on engaging and training the next generation of traditional trades experts in collaboration with partners all across the United States. Before we turn to Molly Baker, manager of Hope Crew, to set the stage and introduce our great panel of experts, we have a few logistics to go over. First of all, we will take questions from the audience during the webinar. Please send the questions via the Q&A function directly to the panelists. So it's a little box at the bottom that says Q&A on your Zoom panel. You're welcome to submit these at any point during the webinar, but we will be answering them at the end of the session, about 10 minutes from the end of the session. But you can also feel free to engage and communicate with the other participants using the chat function. Just remember that the questions go in the Q&A panel, conversation in the chat. That just helps us keep track of what we might not get to so we can answer them at a later time. Closed captioning is also enabled for this webinar. You can turn it on and off using your own settings. Following this program, we will send out a recording of today's webinar directly to the email you used to register. And finally, all forum webinars are available on the National Trust YouTube channel. And one more thing, this webinar series is made possible by members of Preservation Leadership Forum, the professional membership program of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And we sincerely thank everyone who is with us today. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Molly to introduce our topic and our panelists. Molly, hi.
Hello, thanks Priya, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're so happy to have you with us to discuss this important topic. Just to lay a little groundwork, again, I'm Molly Baker. I serve as manager of the Hope Crew program at the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and I work alongside Program Director Milan Jordan. We were founded 10 years ago with the goal of bringing preservation and preservation trades training opportunities to a younger and more diverse audience. In those 10 years, we're proud to say that we've assisted in over $20 million worth of preservation work. We've engaged over 3,700 volunteers. We've worked with over 850 paid participants, and we've worked at over 200 historic sites across the nation. Our participants in working with us gain knowledge of preservation and get a chance to try their hand at the skills needed to preserve historic buildings. One of our goals is to align partners with further ways to continue their learning after their time with us. And one way is by programs that we're going to highlight today. Before we go into our introductions and talking about this program or these various programs, we thought we'd lay the groundwork for why this is needed. Many of you that are joining may understand the great need for preservation trades practitioners. But if this is a new subject for you, why is this needed? Through our anecdotal evidence that we've gathered in the field, certainly, and through exploring initiatives, partner initiatives addressing preservation trades, we've been able to name certain specific concerns and needs. One of those initiatives was our Preservation Priorities Task Force. It was a partner initiative between the National Preservation Partners Network and the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Through that work, we actually met one of our panelists, Nina. But through that 2-year initiative, the goal was to name the issues that were being felt in the preservation trades field and to come up with concrete solutions. In that work, one of the things that was named was the shortfall of people skilled in the traditional trades, and named that there would be an increase, that this problem would continue to worsen every year if more high quality programs weren't created at a much faster rate than they were being created presently. So with that in mind, our program facilitators are doing that. They're addressing this need, and we'd love to hear from them. So first, let me just introduce our panelists today. We're so happy to have them with us. We have Ryan Aguilar. He's the Individual Placement Director for Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps. We have Charlie Langowski, Executive Director for Northern Bedrock Preservation Corps. And we have Janina Pepper, Senior Program Manager of Historic Preservation at the Student Conservation Association. I'd love to have each one of the panelists come on and tell us a little bit about their program before we jump into the conversation. So Ryan, would you like to kick us off?
Thank you, Molly. Hi, everyone. My name is Ryan Aguilar. I come from the pueblos of Zuni and Santo Domingo here in New Mexico. My clans are Corn and Child of Frog. I am with Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps as the Individual Placement Program Director. I previously supported our Zuni crew office and crew-based operations here in Zuni Pueblo for 4 years prior to me joining the individual placements programming with ALCC. And I started my conservation corps career as an individual placement whose primary project was doing historic preservation at El Morro National Monument. During my time as an individual placement, I quickly learned that these programs and this type of projects and the field of preservation, historic preservation, and stabilization is very important, not just to maintain the structures built by our ancestors and to teach these very important traits that need to continue to happen, but to reconnect our indigenous youth to the places that are spoken about and included in our songs, ceremonies, and prayers. And so, we brought the idea back to our tribal leadership to start our crew operations in Zuni Pueblo. And we were very fortunate to be able to start a program for our community. And a lot of the project work that we were able to provide and offer to our participants was doing historic preservation stabilization projects. A lot of our projects and project partners are primarily located here in the Southwest. A lot of our funding and partnerships are through the Department of Interior, particularly with the National Park Service. So we got to send our crews who have never experienced these types of projects and maybe sometimes never left the reservation to be able to reconnect to these sites, to be able to learn that, these places that I mentioned that are talked about in our songs, our ceremonies, and our prayers are indeed actual sites and places that our ancestors once lived and are real. And so, we as the direct descendants of the original builders and constructors of these places and sites, we're very fortunate to be able to, take our crews, our youth, our young adults to these places, to be able to put our hands on these structures and really feel that reconnection to who we are as an ancestral Puebloan ancestor. And so, You know, it was very powerful. Our people uh, quickly learned that, you know, we are it's in our DNA to be able to do this type of work. And so, you know, we really took off, you know, using that as a platform. And our office is located in Acoma Pueblo, the Hopi Nation, Navajo Nation, Zuni Pueblo, Isleta Pueblo, and in Albuquerque, we all, you know, quickly learned that this is something that's very powerful, very fun to do as well. It's very tedious. It can be, you know, challenging as well, working in the elements that the work or the weather has to offer. High temperatures, very cold temperatures, and doing projects that involve stabilization, masonry, erosion control, and yeah, just to make sure that our structures, our ancestor structures are still going to be there for our generations to come. We recognize too that our project partners really need that help and support. And so we were really excited to bring, you know, our experience, you know, learning about these places, being taught the practices even at home, you know, creation or maintaining our Orno ovens, our Kiva structures here at home really came into play for our crews and crew members to be able to apply those practices in a professional setting. All the while learning about, you know, the trainings and the learning opportunities that our project partners and our professional experience or the professional atmosphere can provide to these members. So seeing that there's opportunities within the agencies that we partnered with, and seeing that it is a very much needed practice going forward. So I think it's very important to continue to teach our young adults these traits, these skills to continue the work. All the while, we hope to continue to reconnect our youth to preserve our culture and our language in the process. So that's Ancestral Lands Conservation course. Experience in historic preservation. We've got crews that operate these projects and the individual placements partners with the Historic Preservation Training Center through the Traditional Trades Advancement Program to continue offering our partnerships to the National Park Service units in the Southwest region. So thank you very much for having me. If you have any questions about Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps, or the individual placements programs that are offered through Conservation Legacy, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Then any questions you have in the chat, and our link to our organization site will be provided as well. So I appreciate the time here with you all, and I will now pass it back over to Molly.
Thank you so much, Ryan. It's beautiful to hear about the work that you're doing and incredibly inspiring. We're really glad to have you with us today. Next, we'll introduce Charlie Langowski. If you can come off mute and share a little bit about your program.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie Langowski. I'm the Executive Director at Northern Bedrock Historic Preservation Corps. Kind of a mouthful. We are transitioning to just being Northern Bedrock. We are located in Duluth, Minnesota, and we too are celebrating our 10-year of program history. The first 3 years we were a non-AmeriCorps program. The previous 6 we were an AmeriCorps program, and we're just very excited that we still get to be here doing the work we are doing. We're a little bit unique in some of these programmatic models in that we only focus on historic preservation trades training through an AmeriCorps lens, which adds a couple different like federal bureaucratic things on top of our program. But it's a good way to not only provide our Corps members with living wages, but also an education award at the end of the program. We service the upper Midwest, mostly Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We have project hosts from federal partners to local nonprofits and city governments. Most recently, we were able to be written into our state's Joint Powers Agreement, which allows us to contract directly with state agencies and sidestepping the bidding process. So this year, we're really focusing on bolstering up our state partnerships with the DNR and state parks we have in Minnesota. We offer a wide breadth of hands-on training, everything from restoration, carpentry, masonry, cemetery restoration, for the hard skills, in addition to focusing on the more softer skills or interpersonal skills on what does it mean to be an employee? How do you show up on time? How are you held accountable to your coworkers? We really focus on the development of the whole person versus just on the hard trade skills. We average about 18 core members a year with 47 project hosts. We are just actually fully booked for next year, which is very exciting for us. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Thank you for your time, and I'll drop my email if you have any specific questions. Otherwise, we will chat more soon.
Thank you so much, Charlie. We love learning more about Northern Bedrock, and I'm excited to talk more about your success with your program as we continue this conversation today. So our third panelist today is Nina. Nina, if you'd like to come on and tell us a little bit about your program.
Yeah, hey. Yeah, my name is Nina Peppers. I am the Senior Manager for Historic Preservation at SCA, Student Conservation Association. And that is a youth corps organization that has been around since the late 50s. And a youth corps, if you're not familiar, the SCA kind of works a lot in the conservation field, conservation of natural resources, not like conservation, preservation, how we kind of interchange those words. So a lot of habitat restoration, trail work, trail maintenance, wildland fire, things like that. I started with SCA in 2018 with our flagship preservation program, the Massachusetts Historic Preservation Corps. And after my first year with that program, I really knew that there was a place for historic preservation in this youth corps model. And so I really dug into that to kind of figure out what we could do and how we could have more programs that are doing this work. So the flagship program in Boston, Massachusetts Historic Preservation Corps, they're pretty similar actually to Charlie's program. It's a 10-month program. We have a shop and the crew is about 16 members. We recently expanded and they learn everything from, carpentry, window restoration, masonry, a lot of brick repointing in Boston area. If you've ever been, you know that that is true. And so, a lot of different skills that they can learn out there. And a lot of really, really cool, unique projects. And so, that program inspired me to make more. And I'm still on a mission to do that. And so we've got now 3 different programs. A couple of them are National Park Service programs. One that I'm super excited about that we piloted last year is actually with the nonprofit Preserve Montana. I don't know if you follow them on Instagram, but they've been putting out some really cool stuff about how that summer went. And the idea behind that is to take these kind of other programs that have this set structure and see how we can apply it to different settings, to different states, to different organizations or agencies, government, nonprofit, and all those different kinds of things. Because all of us, we all know the need for historic preservation trades. And not only do we want to get these folks trained in the trades, but we want to empower them to search for different careers as well. And so that's kind of, what I'm working on at SCA. And I'm just, really excited. It is a lot more work, but I'm really excited about having the different structures for these different trades training opportunities. And I think, it's a lot like historic preservation itself, flexibility, being nimble. And I think that kind of comparison together is pretty poetic, and I'm excited to be doing this work for sure. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nina. Your enthusiasm for what you do and the way that you've seen the need and not only addressed it in your local area, but are finding ways to share your wins with other people and help them create programs is exactly what we need. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in our discussion. But for right now, what I'd love to have is all of our panelists to have their screen come on and let's just have a conversation. The first thing I would love to talk about is how your programs were created. How did they come into existence and how did you identify the need? And feel free, whoever wants to jump in, just jump in.
I can start. I mentioned the Massachusetts Historic Preservation Corps was the one that really got me hooked. And that program was started because the state parks knew of SCA and knew of the trail work kind of side of things. And they actually had the idea of like, can SCA do this for other things? Can they kind of have these crews for historic preservation? And so it was a true partnership with the Massachusetts State Parks, DCR. And then, yeah, as it kind of grew, and people kind of heard about the program and members graduated and went off to get jobs and things like that, people just kind of started reaching out. I mean, we're going to probably mention it a lot during this, but like everyone knows that there's a need for these trades and for these projects to get done. And so once people start to find out that it's like getting done over here, they're like, oh, I want it over here too. So that's really exactly how we got started. Yeah.
Fantastic. Does anyone else want to tell us a little bit about how their program came into existence and how you identified this need?
Yeah, I can happen. We started similarly to Nina's story. In 2011, there was a National Register historic site near Ely, Minnesota, that the Forest Service was going through the process of actively decommissioning and using it for forest fire training. Their plan was to raze and burn down 17 acres of historic structures and adopt it into an experimental forest model. Northern Bedrock came about because there was a group of local residents in the Ely area that really did not love that plan for halfway and wanted it to, which is the name of the site near Ely, and wanted it to stay a resource for northern Minnesota. And then we were reached out from the Forest Service to become tenants of the site. We started out with 5-year programmatic agreements to manage Halfway Ranger Station. Last year, we signed the second Section 111 lease in the country for 50-year management of the site. And that really was the hub of our programming for a long time until we purchased a new building in 2023, which we're making a headquarters out of in Duluth, Minnesota. Primarily, we were started to address Halfway and the concerns from the lack of preventative maintenance and oversight for that. And then as word of what we could accomplish made it out, our scope grew, our programmatic partners grew, our number of core members grew, and we eventually then became an AmeriCorps program. This year, we are expanding our scope even further and meeting some museum collections needs that are continuing to come up. So both maintaining the built structures of the museums, but also working to catalog and preserve material culture that those museums store. We work a lot with volunteer or understaffed organizations. So the more we can meet the needs of our partners, the kind of more indispensable we make ourselves, and we create a need for our services that right now has about a 3-year wait list just for projects. So that's how we came to be.
Great. And Ryan, could you tell us a little bit how your program came into existence? I know you covered a bit of it in your introduction, but if there's any more that you'd like to share with us about that.
Yes, absolutely. I think we came about our program's existence by chance. I did not know conservation corps existed prior to my internship at El Morro National Monument. And I was quite frankly blown away with what was happening in the pueblos of Acoma on the Navajo Nation. Just amazed that there was young crews that were going out and doing this amazing work, not just around historic preservation projects, but doing farm work, reconnecting youth to these important culturally significant sites. And so, I learned right away, as I mentioned, that this work was very important. It was impacting me in a very, very very much, as a recovering alcoholic. I needed something positive in my life, and I know our indigenous communities are plagued with alcoholism, drug epidemics, a lot of domestic violence epidemics. And so, I knew that these programs really would bring a lot of positive reinforcement, a lot of positivity overall to the community. But to be able to go out and do this type of work, preserving our ancestral structures, as I mentioned, learning about these sites, we don't think of them as ruins or past structures. We still look at them as living and active places where our ancestor spirits are still there. So being able to make our offerings, learn, what that looks like and how that process looks like through our cultural processes. So it was overall just an amazing journey to be able to bring this concept back home, start a crew program, see the impacts that I was able to experience and see that happening to our crew members and crew leaders and now our individual placement members. And so that's how it came to be, was by chance and by blessing. I feel like I've heard a calling, and now I'm here. I don't see myself doing anything else, but hopefully continuing to provide these types of opportunities going forward. So yeah, that's how we came to be.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really beautiful to not only see the ways in which each of you saw need and addressed it, but the way that you're assisting your communities to have impact on the built environment around them. That's just so important. I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit more brass tacks about if you're comfortable with the funding of your program, your participants. Do you pay your participants? What the structures are like, so that if there's somebody out there that is hearing this and they want to form a corps or find a way to engage people in preservation trades training, that they can have a more concrete idea of what that might look like. So feel free to jump in. Whoever would like to go first.
Can start this one. We do pay our participants, and I think you should only start a program if you're going to pay your participants, especially because these programs are designed to get folks that aren't often represented in trades communities access to trades training, and therefore the jobs that can come from them. We do not pay well. I will fully admit that. We are trying every day to pay better, but paying something is better than nothing. And we offset our pay with transportation stipends and a field schedule that does not require folks to relocate to Duluth. We work 9 days on, 7 days off, so people can commute to our location and still stay with their parents or their cheaper college housing. And because Duluth's cost of living is a bit insane compared to the rest of the state. We also offer gear stipends and an end-of-year bonus in addition to the AmeriCorps Education Award. This, with the purchase of our building last fall, we also now have apartments we can rent to our corps members. So we have 17 beds we can rent, but well below market value rate to our corps members or other AmeriCorps Workforce Development Program partners in the area. I think about how I was as a college student and know the gaps that I would have being in a program like this, and try really hard to address our infrastructure and make it for a program that anyone can have access to without having to rely on parents or some sort of generational wealth or student loans. We really want it to be an opportunity for forward momentum in people's lives. Our funding structure, we have a state grant through Minnesota. For those that don't live in Minnesota, we have something called the Legacy Amendment, which is a sales tax that creates millions of dollars annually that is then divided to fund cultural programming and environmental programming. We get a subsidy of that to support our programming. We also charge a fee for our services. That is about a third of our income. A third of it comes from rental spaces of our buildings we manage as well. And then a smaller but ever-growing portion comes from grants or private donations that we're working to bolster that relationship up as well. Our corps members we recruit, I would say, are not often what you think of when you think of tradespeople. Lots of folks from the LGBTQ community. We have a fair amount of refugees that join our program. Folks that really want solid paying jobs for a lot of different reasons, but don't feel welcomed or invited into some more of the more formal apprenticeship training programs we have in Minnesota, or they don't come from a family with the language to feel comfortable joining a trades program. There's a lot of assumed knowledge when you join in a pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship program that can be really daunting for folks that just don't come from that life. So we take anyone. If you don't know how to swing a hammer, we'll teach you how to do that. And our goal is that you're comfortable by the end of it to have jargon to move forward in that path if you want to, or just feel more confident as an adult taking care of your space in your communities. Most of our participants go on to work in historic preservation to some degree. We have about a 91% return rate, whether it's trades or architecture or more regulatory stuff. Most of our folks return back to the historic preservation field to some degree. The other thing I think makes us a little bit unique is we give priority to folks that are from the Midwest. In part because we don't want anyone to move to our program here, but also in part because the sites we work on are representative of a Minnesota culture. It's important that our core members have a buy-in to some of the sites we work, especially when we're working at sites that are a little more off the beaten path. They're not like huge tourist draws. We want people to feel excited about what they're working on. And the easiest way we found that is that there's a cultural or historic tie from them to the site they're working on.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that with Hope Crew by means of our program. We're working nationally, but we've prioritized working with local participants that can really feel the impact of contributing to a historic site in their vicinity or a historic building in their neighborhood. And it helps them to feel more engaged in their community. Additionally, I just want to comment on how much I appreciate the way that you've acknowledged that the construction trades, preservation trades, sometimes is not an environment where everyone sees themselves being a part of it. And you've created a safe and nurturing space for anyone to see themselves in this field. I know that's one of the big priorities in which Hope Crew was founded upon 10 years ago, is making sure that we're creating an opportunity for anybody to try their hand at this. Because we do believe once you try your hand at this, you will find a connection to it and it will become a fulfilling career for you. So I appreciate that your program has prioritized that as well. Would anyone else like to speak to some of the funding participant structures of your program?
Yeah, I can. I mean, it's a lot of contracts, right? Just like any kind of getting work done is. And I think, you know, we're mission minded though. So it's not just a contract. It's not, you know, just a check to get work done. So in Boston, we partner with National Parks of Boston, with HACE, Historic Architecture, Conservation and Engineering, also part of the Park Service. And then we also partner with, DCR. We also have a big AmeriCorps grant, a state-funded AmeriCorps grant through the Massachusetts Service Alliance with that program. And then last year we did start doing fee-for-service, similar to what Charlie mentioned. So we have one or two of those per year that we work on. And that really allows us also not only to like get money, of course. But all of those partners have different types of projects. They all have different types of like crews that our crew get to work with. They get to like experience different opportunities to like see what it is really like to work in the preservation field. And so all of that is wrapped up into how we get funding. Yeah, it's a lot more than just signing those contracts and checks. And then the other programs with Preserve Montana, they do a lot of fundraising, a lot of really awesome fundraising to get those members in the field. They're fundraising right now. So, and then, yeah, the other ones are also just federal National Park Service contracts. But again, it's mission minded. It's about training. It's, you know, the folks at HPTC, Historic Preservation Training Center, do an awesome job of really prioritizing that training aspect. And that's why we contract, right? So.
And your participants are paid?
Yes, definitely. Our participants are paid $600 a week or more, depending on the program and position and how long they've been with us. Yeah. As well as other benefits. Yeah.
Yeah, we always like to celebrate that people are paying their participants. We fully believe in that at Hope Crew, that if you're doing the work and you're spending your time learning this skill, that we want to pay you for that. And so we do prioritize paying our participants. There is occasionally a project in which the participants that we work with are not allowed to accept payment, but that is very few and far between. So we want to make sure that they're compensated. So cheers for that as well. Ryan, would you like to share anything about your program structure?
Absolutely. We at Conservation Legacy and Ancestral Lands Conservation Corps um, offer or operate through the fee-for-service model. And primarily our partnerships are through federal task agreements. And so We also have direct partner agreements too for those non-federal entities or nonprofits that we also partner with, tribal entities. And so, yeah, we build our partnerships based on that fee for service. So, we do start our living stipends. I should say, we're an AmeriCorps partner as well. So we offer a living stipend, and we start our stipends at 640 a week or more based on the partners' funding, or maybe even the technical skills that this position is required to come with education backgrounds as well. So we offer that to our participants depending on their length of service. We also offer health insurance and other benefits that come with it, including the AmeriCorps Seagull Education Award. And so, we make sure that we compensate our participants through the living stipends. If they are non-AmeriCorps participants, we set up a hourly wage for those members as well. And so, yeah, again, through federal tax agreements or partner agreements, our fee for service model or formula include, that weekly stipend, our wraparound services or support costs that our organization includes, and any potential professional development budgets or supplies budgets that our partners want to include in the partnership for their participants. We also make sure that's included as well. So, we try and make it enticing, but considering that some of these positions are very technical. Again, those are on the higher end. Our entry level positions, we don't require any experience, any education or formal education, if they don't have that yet. And I think the education award is a very great way to encourage those to consider that going forward. And so, or maybe they're coming right out of the schools and colleges and are looking for ways to build their experience, but also offering that education award is a great way for individuals and students to help pay off their accrued costs that they have currently. So I think, yeah, it's awesome to be an AmeriCorps partner. I wish I signed up for more AmeriCorps terms myself, but I always encourage our members to utilize the benefits that come with the positions. Know everything that you've done through your experience, so that way you can put that on your resume, trainings, skills, all the things that they've acquired through their terms. We want to make sure we're sending them on to that next chapter, or having them come back for another term. We have a very high return rate as well, and folks working their way from crew member to crew leader to sometimes staff positions. So it's also an awesome thing to see in our conservation corps. So.
That's fantastic. We're hearing a lot about the successes that y'all are having. Charlie's talking about 91% of their participants go on into the field, and Ryan, you're sharing that there's growth within these programs and a return rate. And Nina, I know that you've shared with me previously the success you're having as well. That to me really helps to diminish this misconception that young people don't want to work. Can we talk a little bit about that? I know that's something I've heard. I know in conversations with some of you all that you all have heard that. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I see young people out there eager to work. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I can kick this one off. I heard this at a conference recently, in like an education kind of roundtable talk. A business owner, a preservation business owner, said, young people just don't want to work. They're not applying. They're not working hard. And I'm like, that is incorrect, my friend. The three of us here and Molly, we are running programs where every day we see young people show up and work their butts off, because they want to learn these trades, because they care about these spaces, because they care about the other people on their team, right? They care about their future. And I do think that that is quite a misconception. And I think one thing that's really special about our programs is that we create a safe space for people to learn. We create a safe space for people of color to learn, of women to learn, of trans and non-binary people to learn when they don't feel safe in other trade spaces, right? And so we are really intentional about our curriculum to make sure that folks who do want to work hard are actually given that opportunity. And so that's what these programs really stand for. And so when I hear that, not to sound mean, but I want to look at those people and say, I think they just don't want to work for you. They do want to work. I have a bunch of them working for me right now. And so I think, when I hear that, I really just want folks to like consider, what does your workspace look like? What opportunities are you providing? How are you talking to your employees? How are you setting them up for success? How are you training? What language are you using? And all that kind of stuff. So I could talk about it all day, but I've got a couple of crews in the field right now that are absolutely incredible, and I will stand up for them every second. Yeah.
Piggyback off of what Nina said, I do answer that question pretty rudely and say, like, you have a PR problem if you can't find young adults to work for you. And I truly do mean that, both from what Nina talked about on like what is the actual culture of your work in your job sites, but also, are you understanding the motivators of young adults? And most oftentimes people are not. We on average receive about 300 applications a year for 18 positions. For a program that does very little active recruiting. We drop some things on Indeed, we drop some things on AmeriCorps. Not everyone's a good fit, but that is an insane rate of applications for a program that by self-admission does not pay well and seems like a hard job, camping and learning trade skills in the fields. But the motivators we see for our young adults are much more intrinsic than a lot of the trades unions go for. There's a connection culturally or spiritually to the site. There's a connection to community stewardship that is overlooked in a lot of the trades programming. There's a connection to wanting to be part of the future of the site and wanting to actively understand how to be part of the future of the site, in addition to making sure a historic population is represented. So in Minnesota, we are gearing up to celebrate 50 years of Somali and Hmong immigration into the state. And we're looking actively on what does that look like from a preservation standpoint, and how can we identify sites that on the surface may be not part of the Hmong or Somali story, but when you understand how those groups have worked in Minnesota, there's a lot more that opens up in terms of historic preservation and ability to connect to those cultures, which I think is really important to understand. And it's much more than like, this building needs tuck pointing or this building needs new floors. They don't really care about that. They often don't care about what architectural style a building is, when it was built, who lived there. It's much more emotion based. And I also think we can learn some things for the young folks. We do not have to work 80 hours a week to fight to have a job that doesn't pay for the grad school you took to get to it. There's some young adults that are still pretty radicalized, but we can learn a lot from them as well in terms of respecting ourselves as employees and our time and our energy and what we're putting our bodies through to get a paycheck. And oftentimes that does come with some hard conversations when people of a younger age have some misconceptions on what working is. But there is a lot of beauty and I think kind of wiseness in some of the bigger conversations young folks have around work.
That is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know we have quite a few questions and we have about 15 minutes left, but before we go to the Q&A, I'd love to ask, it's clear to me that you all are very dedicated to this work and feel passionate about it. Can you tell me like where you came about this passion? Like what inspired you to enter this field? I always think it's so fascinating to talk to somebody about how they found preservation. Why do you do what you do? I'd love to hear that if anybody would like to share that with us.
Yeah, I can start. I have a zooarchaeology background, did a lot of archaeology work in Alaska, hated seasonal work. It was just not for me. Transitioned to the museum fields in a historic building where I learned a lot of the hands-on skills. And what drew me to kind of the AmeriCorps workforce development world is that as a young adult, I really did not want to go back to school, but I knew I could be killer at some of these jobs if someone would just give me a chance. And that's really inspired me to create a program where we just give people a chance to learn on the job. And I saw a question in the chat that was about more regulatory or planning, kind of section 106. descriptors. We are actively working on what could be considered an apprenticeship for some more regulatory or planning jobs, architectural historians, things of that nature, because it is such a roadblock to require a graduate degree program to go in those jobs, and people just aren't going to grad school at the rate they used to. And if we can provide kind of an apprenticeship or a job shadow opportunity that can meet some of those Section 106 requirements, that is the first step in diversifying a workforce.
Would anyone else like to talk about why they're doing what they're doing?
Yeah, I can jump in. This conservation core and doing historic preservation, I can say it saved my life. As I mentioned, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And so I'm hoping that, um, through my limited college background and limited conservation core experience prior to my internship, I hope to inspire others that, if I can do it, they can do it. And, sharing my journey in recovery, um, again, just trying to find ways to inspire. And that's where my passion comes from is being willing to learn, gaining the experience, that I have now. As I mentioned, I'm a program director, and I never thought I'd be in this type of position or in this field. And so it really inspires me every day to put my best foot forward, and to show my community members and those that I come in contact with that it is possible, to learn new skills, to follow your heart, your passion. If you don't have a college degree, you can still always get it. I'm still working on that. And so that's something that, I want to show that it is possible. And I think these programs really give the opportunity. If I wasn't given that chance, I don't know where I would be. And I really feel like all the people I've come in contact with, including you all today, have really, a special place in my heart. And I really am looking forward to continuing to do this work and inspire others. And again, continue to offer those opportunities to give that chance to somebody as well, to be able to do this work going forward. So that's why I do.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Nina, do you like anything to add as we wrap up the conversation?
Sure, yeah. I'm kind of obsessed with this work because this is the program that I wish I had. I think really similar to Ryan. It's just this is what I wanted. And I was really timid and trying to figure it out. I don't have a college degree. I was going from job to job to job to job, trying to figure out what I wanted, and then I found it. In these historic preservation programs. And I felt really empowered in that work that I could do. Going from working at TJ Maxx part-time to running a table saw is really empowering. And I just really want to be able to provide that kind of opportunity to more young people. So it is more than the historic preservation part. But I also really love old buildings. Like, who knew you could connect all these passions into like one thing? So that's definitely what I'm doing. And I'll be here for the rest of my life, I think.
I love that. I too found preservation in kind of a roundabout way, and I just feel like it was meant to be to find this field. And I do have a degree in building preservation, but I would say that the beauty of these programs is that it you can go through these programs and learn without taking on that debt. So it's making sure that there's opportunities for anyone that wants to pursue this field to have a chance to find it and explore it. And I'm so appreciative that your programs exist. I'd be remiss if I didn't share that you too, our viewers, can find ways to create programs locally. All of our panelists are happy to share. I've spoke with them. They're happy to share ways in which you can create programs. Nina, in particular, has been working really hard to show that you in each one of your states can replicate these programs. I was lucky enough to have a fellowship in this last year working on naming issues in the preservation trades and finding solutions. And as a result, created a preservation trades program creation guide. So if you're interested in that, we'll link that in the chat. But there are ways that you can do this. That's what we want you to go away with, knowing that you too can create a program. And there's evidence of that right here with our panelists today. So we're so happy to have them with us. Let's try to get to some of these questions. We have 14 questions here, so I'm going to start at the top. Have you worked with community colleges in your training? Has anyone worked with community colleges? Great. I know we have at Hope Crew, we've worked with programs that align with whatever skill we're trying to build. So if there's an existing construction trades program, we're going to invite them to join in and work alongside us and add on this information that could benefit them moving forward by understanding how preservation fits into what they're already doing. Any other comments on that from anybody? Okay, great. Let's see. Is the pre-trade or set of skills that they could, okay, so a question about high school students. Is there any advice you can give for a pre-apprenticeship training that could be adopted in the high school programs? Again, I go back to that program creation guide. There's information in there with curriculum, how you can adopt that in high school trades programs, but any other advice from our panelists?
Yeah, we work a lot with high school kids. I would say the number one thing to start early on in your training is just the ability to creative problem solve, which I know is talked about a lot, but when you open up an old building and you're only trained in contemporary construction techniques, you have no idea what's going on. You have no idea what the approach is. So really just letting folks break things and build things and pull apart walls and think about how it's put it back together is instrumental in being a tradesperson working on older buildings. Contemporary structures are a lot more straightforward and the fixes are a lot more straightforward. That's not always the case with older structures.
It's great. I love that you're encouraging people to explore and learn by getting their hands in it. That's wonderful. I think that's great advice and why hands-on programs work. Another question we have for any of the panelists, what are some key partnerships, funding needs, or organizational needs to create a historic trades program? I think you all addressed a lot of your funding needs, but what are key partnerships that you've developed by means of your program or to create your program?
Our trainers, we cannot do it without our trainers, both from the folks that come in for carpentry skills, but also our OSHA 10 trainers and our workplace safety trainers, our first aid trainers, our diversity, equity, inclusion in the workplace trainers. They help you solve problems that you are not set up to solve on your own. And it's very nice to know you have a network there to support you in ways that you do not need to have on your staff team, because you cannot find a staff person that knows everything that needs to be known to run programs like this.
Yeah, I'll add to that too, is like leaning on those partnerships and things too to help you understand when it is time to hire someone on staff. Those partners can only do so much and only should be doing so much. So kind of leaning on those partnerships in that way as well, and kind of recognizing your actual program needs.
Yes, I'd also add, as much requirements that come with AmeriCorps partnerships, I do think they are very beneficial. And the benefits that come with federal partners through things like the Public Land Hiring Authority, direct hiring authority benefits, I think, really in this work. And it also helps with recruitment and just enticing the job. I hope people can hear me. My internet connection's a little slow right now, I think. But yeah, I think just having those federal partners, not only for technical mentorship and training, but again, having a way or a path to a permanent job or seasonal job with that agency, and kind of building their resume throughout their term there at the site. So I really do think it goes a long way.
It's great. And yeah, we're hearing you. You cut out for 1 second, but picked right back up. So we got your full point there. That's great. Yeah, I know with Hope Crew, we of course operate quite differently than the core model, but partnerships is key to what we do. We couldn't do anything without partnerships through acquiring the funding, through finding local youth serving organizations to offer these opportunities to, through local preservation partners, through community engagement. That's what makes these projects happen and so successful is partnership. So certainly one of the reasons why we've been able to have success over these 10 years are our partners. Let's do one more question, and then I know there's a little wrap up that our colleagues would like to do to talk about some other upcoming opportunities. The last question that I see here that I think we're going to have time to answer is, do these programs provide services to specific projects? For example, if a city or town has a building in need of restoration, could the municipality contract with the program to have the students work on their building?
Yeah, we are launching a program this summer called the Underutilized Building Restoration, in which local members enrolled in our program are staying in buildings in our downtown area that are otherwise not being used. They're acting in a preventative maintenance way while completing projects within the site that make them more appealing to developers or future owners for redevelopment. They get to live in site completely free while attending college, and then we pay them as well for their work on the site. They are both learning hand skills along with tagging along with me on a lot of the community development sides of things as we make headway with this kind of project. It's very exciting. There's a lot of unknowns, but we work directly with the city this summer to manage 5 buildings that have been abandoned for 3 or more years to make sure they stay up. We have a bad problem with raising buildings in Duluth, so we are looking to stop that.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I think at this point, we probably need to pass it back to Priya and Rhonda for the final closing. But I first just want to thank you all for joining us today. Our panelists, we are so appreciative that you are so dedicated to your work, and we're so grateful that you're engaging a new audience, a new generation in these much needed skills. So thank you for your hard work, and thank you for all of our guests today for joining. And I hope that you gleaned something from the enthusiasm and the work that our panelists have shared with you today. Thanks.
Thanks, Molly. Wow, this is such an inspiration. And it sounds from the chat that so many people heard your words, were inspired by your words, and are looking for ways to build programs or be a part of programs like yours. So thank you so much for talking us about your experience and your inspiration and your work. I really, really appreciate hearing from you. Just a couple of things to close things out. I'm going to hit enter so all of the links show up at the same time. So we have one more webinar for 2024, and it is the last in our African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund Conversation Series, which if you've been coming to some of these other ones, it's a recorded session from a summit that they had in 2023. This one is focusing on revitalization and culture. I hope you come and join us. The upcoming webinars link that I just dropped in the chat is where you can find registration for that session. And we'll also include those links and everything else in the follow-up email after this webinar. Rhonda, next slide. I also wanted to make this ask. This year is the National Trust's 75th anniversary. And if you found this webinar valuable and have not yet, please consider making a donation to the National Trust to join us in the crucial work of historic preservation as we build on the past to enable a shared and humane future. You can check out the different ways you can donate at savingplaces.org/support-us. Or if you happen to have a donor advice fund, there is a special link for that. But that link is also available on the Support Us page as well. It's very exciting. 75 years feels like an amazing milestone for the organization. So I hope you consider supporting us. And then finally, if you'd like to learn more about Preservation Leadership Forum, the website link is there. And then also, as I mentioned at the beginning, the recording will be shared to the email you used to register for this session, along with all the links. But if you happen to not find that email or see it, the video should be up on our YouTube channel, National Trust for Historic Preservation, within about 24 hours. If you have any questions that we didn't touch on, or you have questions after the fact, you can email us directly at forum@savingplaces.org, and we will make sure that gets to the right person. Once again, thank you everyone so much for being a part of this webinar and joining us today. And I hope to see you at our next one on December 12th. Have a great day.